Thanks a lot, Jamie. Sorry, that's the wrong slide. So since we originally did our talk, they've actually reached 50 million monthly views since last year, and so it's been incredible to be part of that milestone.
What if scaling your website to millions of users didn't require a complete rebuild? What if some small strategic changes could drive massive growth? In this talk, we will take you behind the scenes of RecipeTin Eats' journey and share how we help them scale to grow from 25 million to 50 million monthly views. We will break down our key technical strategies and decisions, giving you some practical, actionable insights on how to build, scale, and optimize your platform.
So if there's anything that we want you to take away from the end of this talk, is that active work needs to be done across a wide spectrum of activities in order to grow, in order for growth to be explosive and maintained after. So a lot of you have probably never heard of RecipeTin Eats outside of Australia or America. So here's just some background information on who they are. So they are a family-owned business with a small team. They're an Australian-based website with a global audience, and they also offer 1,500 free recipes for anyone to enjoy. So there's no paywall on the website. Also, Go from RecipeTin Eats is over there, and so he's happy for you to go over there and talk to him about RecipeTin Eats or food in general. They also boast some truly impressive stats. So as Jamie said, they are ranked #1 for the category in Australia. They are the 86th most visited website in Australia, and they are one of the top 10 recipe sites in the world. Pretty incredible to think that they are quite a small team. And also I forgot to mention that Dozer, their dog, is the CEO, and everyone has to report to the dog.
You must be wondering what's driving this amazing growth. The engine for growth here is, first up, the content. Of course, that's what people come to the site for. RecipeTin Eats has built a reputation as a go-to destination for delicious recipes accompanied by beautiful photos and easy-to-follow instructions. Next, the brand. RecipeTin Eats has formed a strong brand over 10+ years, built on authenticity, down-to-earth values, and community. They have amassed a huge and fiercely loyal base of readers and followers. They have got 350K email subscribers, 1.5 million of Instagram followers, and 3.7 million of Facebook followers. And finally, trust. Readers often talk about Nagi as if she's a friend or mentor, a single trusted source backed by experience, knowledge, and passion. They know Nagi tests every recipe very rigorously, takes her own photos, and writes from the heart. This authenticity sets the brand apart from AI-generated content and impersonal blogs. Now let's talk about the enablers that supports this growth. First up is technology. RecipeTin Eats has always invested heavily in technology for the central role that it plays in delivering content to the global audiences and helping the business drive growth. WordPress has been their choice of platform since the beginning, chosen for its open source ecosystem, ease of use, scalability, and extensibility. User experience for the site is amazing. The website is easy to navigate. The recipe content is well organized with eye-catching photos. RTE makes it as easy and delightful for the users to find, discover, and consume the recipe content. Happy visitors are returning visitors, right? And RecipeTin Eats has got 40% of page views from their repeating visitors, which talks a lot about the value that we are delivering. And finally, engineering. A solid hosting, support, and engineering foundation is what keeps the technology kicking. It ensures the website is fast, reliable, and secure, and is meeting both the business and end users' goals now and for the future. So in today's talk, we will deep dive into these enablers and share how we supported and fueled RTE's growth.
So we chose the hard life, and we decided not to rebuild the site from scratch. Instead, we decided to build alongside the existing code, though there are a few hurdles to overcome first. So with every project, there's always tech debt, and RecipeTin Eats was no different. However, the tech debt that we inherited with this project led to multiple issues affecting both server performance and core web vitals.
One such situation that comes to mind was when we saw the same CSS code being duplicated across the project. Here are some stats. We saw that the fonts were loading 3 times. There was duplicate build files for the same theme, the same CSS being included over and over again. And finally, we found that the CSS overrides were done directly in the database, which was resulting in styling being out of the sync for different environments, and also the cause of multiple styling issues in the front end. Because the amount of CSS overrides in the database were huge, we would often face these issues. Now, to solve this, we identified and removed the duplicate code. We also reorganized the CSS to make it more manageable. We overhauled our build tools, allowing for quicker build times during development and deployments. And finally, we introduced WordPress coding standards project-wide, helping us with more consistent code base. Now let's talk about regular updates. Updates aren't just about staying current, they're also about avoiding future debt. If we delay updates too long, we end up with a system that is outdated, fragile, and expensive to fix. We made sure that our updates are strategic rather than just a routine. Most of our plugins are now loaded via Composer, and our Composer and NPM packages updates are handled by a dependable in GitHub. While there are still some plugins where we need to update manually, and that's because the pro version of those plugins do not have the support for Composer yet.
So once we fixed these issues, we then could start looking at how we could improve the front end. So for context, RecipeTin Eats used vanilla CSS, and there wasn't any real standardized approach to the front end styling, and it was a spaghetti mess pretty much. It made updates tedious, and you'd spend more time looking for the styles to update than what it would take to make the changes themselves. So as Shipra mentioned earlier, we reorganized the CSS to make it more manageable, enabling us to seamlessly continue updating the existing styling. A technical decision was made to adopt a front-end framework to accelerate the development of existing pages we wanted to rebuild, with the same approach applied to all new pages moving forward. So essentially, we're using both vanilla CSS for the old stuff, and then we decided on a new framework. So that new framework that we decided on was Tailwind CSS. And here are a few reasons why we chose it. And for those who are unfamiliar, it's a utility-first framework that promotes faster development, better accessibility and ease of customization. And unlike other front-end frameworks, it's significantly lighter as it only includes the styles that you want to use. Not building the website in its entirety allowed us to be deliberate and understand the impact of these changes much quicker than it would have been if we rebuilt the entire site. Also, because RecipeTin Eats has a really strong SEO, we just didn't want to harm that reputation that sometimes comes along with a full rebuild. And personally, that's one of the things that agencies should always take into consideration with new clients. Just because a full rebuild will result in more money initially, it may also have long-lasting effects on the site's overall reputation that may be difficult to recover from when things go south. We also adopted an incremental approach that allowed us to change or add features which we were going to have the most business value for the client themselves. So our first major rebuild on the site focused on the homepage and the category pages. And this is what the homepage kind of looked like before we did the rebuild. And this homepage was built using advanced custom fields, which, while flexible, it posed its own challenges. From the start, we wanted to move away from relying on ACF. In our experience within the enterprise space, we've observed that the plugin can cause performance issues, particularly due to the large number of database queries it generates when pulling a substantial amount of data from the database. Also, the homepage needed to be updated for a more modern look. So this is the new homepage that we came up with. It utilizes a custom page template, so it doesn't actually use the full site editing on WordPress yet, because it's still evolving and it's just pretty much not there yet. So that's what we landed on. And because we landed on the block editor, you can insert custom blocks or core blocks, and it just makes it a lot easier for them to go and do that. Also, the homepage is driven by content groups displayed by sliders and along with strategically placed call to action blocks, so it's much easier for them to update. We also use personalization blocks, which we'll go into in a bit on how they work, that geo-target users from different countries with different content. The categories, however, and this is what it used to look like, it posed a greater challenge because out of the box, categories in WordPress, there's really not much functionality that you can add to it unless you use something like ACF, and again, we wanted to go away from ACF. And also on this page here, the recipes are only displayed by the most recent recipes first, with the ability to also filter by quick and easy. I'm not sure if you can see that, but there's a filter button there as well. So we decided to implement a custom post type. Again, using the block editor. Again, using the exact same blocks that we built for the homepage. And it just makes it easier for the client to add the content to this page. And it's creating essentially a landing page, so more content for the category page itself. It is then mapped to the taxonomy category. And so this way, there's not much that changes. The user still goes to the exact same URL. It's still the category URL as far as they're aware. So there's not much difference there. However, not all categories have been migrated over to this new post type, as it does take time to add and maintain the content. And this makes the category pages on the front end look much more interesting than it was before. And the added benefit to this was we saw increased time on the page being recorded by Google because users have more choice. And this is just a landing page, and this is the old paginated pages. They still exist, they're just one level deeper.
Now let's talk about how we utilize the blocks in a bit more detail. So these ranged in complexity with the ease of use and performance in mind. The most complex block was this carousel block, which allows the editor to add one or more carousels. Each slide, as you see here, in the carousel can either be a category or a recipe. The block is also future-proofed so that in case we want to add in a custom post type or a taxonomy, we can do that with a very minimal effort. Each slide also allows the editor to override the title, thumbnail, and even the link if they need to. But not all blocks are as complex. For instance, the About block here allows to add multiple tabs where the visitors can know more about Nagi and the dozzer. Converting these blocks to a pattern then allowed us to use the same block across multiple pages. But when a block needs to closely resemble the front end and not the functionality, we style it as close as possible. As you see here, this is our latest recipe block. On the front end features, it provides a slider allowing the user to slide through recipes, while at the back end, we just display a very close approximation to what it looks like. Data-driven decisions. We all have been there debating over design choices, content strategies, or feature updates, asking what will work best for our users. But what if we didn't have to guess? That's where data-driven decisions come into picture. So instead of relying on our gut feeling or assumptions, we let real user behaviors guide our choices. We utilized real user behaviors and data to drive smarter decisions, optimize experiences, and scale effectively. So I'm going to now talk about how we utilize these insights. So we use GA to track user behaviors and key metrics like page views, bounce rates, and engagement to identify what's working and what's not working. We also use Google Search Console Insights to help analyze the search queries, the rankings, and click-through rates to refine our SEO strategy and boost the visibility. All of these helped us with actionable decisions to improve the UX, refine the content, and enhance the performance. We let data to be our guide.
Oops. So now that's at a page level. Now we're going to talk at a block level. So at a block level, we use the Altus Accelerate plugin, which is the first native block-enabled, analytics-driven personalization system within the block editor. While RecipeTin Eats currently only uses a personalization block, the plugin also contains a whole bunch of features, so A/B testing blocks allowing experimentation with and comparing different content variants within the blocks themselves. And this also means that you're not relying on a third-party site. It's all within the RecipeTin Eats website itself. Broadcasting blocks allows for promotion of the same block site-wide for a more global audience, plus much more features. So how do we use this plugin on the site? Hopefully you can see these. So we essentially have two blocks that are basically almost exactly the same. And these are served differently depending on what country the user is from. And the real difference is quite minor here. It's just a small text change and an image change for one particular country. So other personalization blocks display the content completely different. So on the left, we have USA, UK, and Canada, and they're served certain recipes, and then rest of the world are served completely different recipes. And this works especially well when some parts of the world are in summer, while the others are in winter. So northern and southern hemispheres obviously experience different seasons. So targeting seasonally relevant recipes based on the time of year is crucial for the recipe site. So this is the back end. So they just basically choose between the blocks quite easily to go and update them. It basically shows how easy it is to change. We don't show how the content's changed because that was going to take too long, but I think you kind of get the idea. The good thing about Altus Accelerate is the ability for all native and third-party blocks are supported by default. So there's next to no work that you need to do to get the personalization to start working. They also have in-block analytics as well, which is really good. So they have block views. So it shows how many times the block has been viewed, and then a conversion rate and goal. Also coverage, and lastly improvement, plus or minus. This is also taken from the staging site, so the improvement doesn't look very good. But this data allows us to understand how well the content is performing, and we can make informed decisions about how it's displaying. So it raises the question, are my visitors generally interested in the type of content that I'm serving to them, or are they just like skipping over it and then it's a waste of their time displaying it? So on the front end, when RecipeTin Eats wants to go and test it to make sure that it's displaying properly, they can easily just switch between whatever countries they're displaying it for. So here we display it for Australia and New Zealand, and then US and Canada, so it's quite easy. Now, sometimes you might not always trust what's shown in WordPress, so they also do connect via a VPN to double check to make sure that the country of origin is also working to display that content.
Now let's talk about how we optimize the testing. To provide some context on what testing looked like before, so the team was doing manual testing, front-end verifications on the predefined pages, checking specific features across different devices, desktops, mobiles. The process was definitely time-consuming for the client and would often lead to delays in production deployment. That is because any bugs we found would require retesting for affected pages. To resolve this, we introduced visual regression testing. While some features still require manual testing, VRT has significantly reduced our testing time and improved efficiency. In the next slides, we would be exploring how VRT works for RecipeTin Eats. So our tools of choice for this was Cypress in conjunction with Percy. Cypress is a JavaScript framework that enables automated front-end testing, while Percy complements this by providing visual testing capabilities. And lastly, Circle CI runs Cypress before sending it over to Percy. In the slide here, we are showing Percy. What it does is that the system automatically detects and highlights any differences between a potentially modified page and the original, allowing for a visual comparison to spot the difference. The red indicates here in the design for the client to check and highlights these are the potential areas which might have changed. So you should be reviewing these, and they can then approve or decline the change if they wish to.
Also, you probably can't see, but this is the baseline. So this is what the client's approved before, and then this is potentially the new baseline if they're happy with it. So that's really good, the fact that the red definitely shows changes there. And I'll go into another slide in a moment about that. So we also introduced Mabel for low-code testing solution for building out the recipe page. That is used in conjunction with Cypress and Percy. The way Mabel works is that the user defines a pre-recorded set of steps to build the recipe page in the back end. And then when they go and run this job, it normally takes about 10 minutes to complete, but it depends on how complex the page is that's being built to how long that will actually take. And so this allows RecipeTin Eats to make sure that any blocks that are used in building the recipe page are still displaying and functioning as they should. So here's an example of that. So on the right-hand side, it's the output of Mabel, and then on the left-hand side, it's basically what Mabel's doing based on those steps predefined by the client. So I'll even go through the media library, search for the media item, and insert it. I know this is very quick, but it's a very slow process. Mabel is quite slow. And then with the recipe, it opens the modal, adds the image, and goes through and just basically sets the fields that we want to test against. It will then also set the featured image for the post. So it's essentially just, it's just an automation. It will set it private as well, because we don't want Google to pick up on it. On the front end, it will scroll down to the bottom, and then it will make a comment to make sure everything's working. And sorry, that's like really quick. So I'll just run it through again, just so you can see how it works. But yeah, it really depends on the amount of blocks that you want to insert to how long this actually takes. Unfortunately, I can't skip through the video, so I'm sorry. So once it gets past the recipe card and the featured image, I think the fact that it can go in and set the private page is like really good, because we don't want Google picking up on these pages. And this is always the same URL as well. So the user will actually go and delete that from the back end for the next time. So it's a fresh page always. Looks a bit out of sync. Yeah. Okay, so next we utilize Cypress with Circle CI, with each job being held for approval, and is only run when the client is ready for the VRT process to start. So manually approving these jobs significantly reduces the cost associated with Circle CI, which can become quite expensive. I know on some projects previously, every time somebody makes a commit to GitHub, Circle CI runs, and then that's like an associated cost on top of it, whereas this way we manually approve everything, which we may look to automate it, but that's something to discuss in the future. And so our current workflow, as I said, they hold it for approval. And at the moment, it's for staging, when it's just about to go to production. And then also, when they want to get that new baseline on production, they'll run it post-deployment. It will then also go, Cypress will then go and create the snapshot, so a screenshot of that page. And then lastly, it will then go and upload that screenshot to Percy. And now Percy is, I'm not sure if many people know Percy, but it's a product by BrowserStack. So if you've used BrowserStack, I can't remember if Percy is available to the existing BrowserStack subscription or if you have to pay an additional fee, but yeah, it's part of the BrowserStack family. And then here is more of what you saw earlier in terms of spotting the difference. And it's highlighted in red. So you can switch that off if you want to see like the actual visual change there. Now, the one thing that you do need to take note of is that when you're testing a page like the one that we do in Mabel, the date and time does change. So that does become a false positive that gets highlighted. And one thing that I always recommend doing when using a tool like this is to actually make sure that it's a false positive and not a typography change, because sometimes you can get really caught out with that. Yeah. Sorry, our slides are just slightly behind what's up there.
So yeah, let's do a quick recap of our key strategies.
I can't go to, oops.
We can click.
Yep. Yep. So just remember, you don't always have to do a full rebuild. Testing incremental changes can significantly be more effective when it comes to growing your site. Just because, as I said earlier, just because you're going to make a bit more money at the start with a full site rebuild, there are other things that you need to take into account when it comes to your client, and you need to take those into account instead of not just money.
Imagine making decisions that are backed by real-time insights, and that's the power of data-driven decisions, data-driven engineering, the slide that you showed previously. So use data to guide your decisions and optimize for better results.
Yep. So yeah, as I said, our slides are behind because I think I was pointing in the wrong direction. But shifting from manual testing to automated visual regression testing not only frees up your client's time, but it also streamlines development and deployment processes. So the way that you've got to think about it is that the more time the client is in testing, the more time they could be working on features that they want you to build, which in turn results in more money for you and your business. So that's definitely something to take into account there. So that's the end of our talk. And now for questions.
Exactly 20 seconds to go. Okay. Perfect timing. Thank you so much. Do we